I want to welcome you to a special broadcast. It's a special edition of Bobby Likis Car Clinic, and it's very exciting for me because we're located in the Renaissance Center, of course, here atop OnStar Studios. And this broadcast, again, from the OnStar Studios, will feature some FaceTime with special individuals who really know their stuff. And when I say know their stuff, we're talking OnStar, we're talking safety, we're talking futures, and in fact, we're talking with the gentleman now that's with us, Nick Pudar, who is a vice president of planning and business development. That's where you fall. That's what you do. I want to welcome you, Nick, to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Great to spend this time with you. Give us the beginning of OnStar. I mean, we sort of think we know where it's going, but how did it all start?
Well, Bobby, thanks for having me, first of all. And, back in the early 90s, GM posed the question, what if we were able to leverage the emerging connectivity that's emerging in the world? What could we do with that? How could we make the vehicle experience better? And we put a team of people together and really looked at the opportunities hard. Back at that time, we had Hughes satellite business. We had EDS as the backbone of the IT world. We had great vehicles. And what could we do with this business? And so, as we assessed it really hard, the real issue was how do you get better, safer experiences for customers? And that's really one of the things that came through. And so we built a business centered around peace of mind, safety and security, and leveraging this connectivity. And formed the business in 1995 and had our first customer in the fall of '96. And we started off on a very small vehicle portfolio, really sort of kicked the tires, so to speak, and learned how to operationalize this business, and really grew it from there. And today we're on about 95% of all the retail vehicles GM's makes, and really having an impact on a lot of people's lives.
Fast forward 96 to 2010 and even beyond. We know where it started. We've got to handle emergency situations, safety situations, and safety for consumers. Where do you see it going from there? What's the next expansion for folks who buy the GM cars that have OnStar?
Well, there's a broadening of things that people want to do while they're out and about. And so navigation is one of those things that is continuing to emerge in people's minds. A lot of portable navigation devices out there, and people recognizing this has value. People printing out their directions from online sources, and this notion of being able to manage their destinations is a key piece. And that's actually an aspect of safe driving. If you don't have to worry about making sure you're getting someplace in an appropriate way, then your mind is on other things like driving. There's a lot more communications. There's a lot more entertainment activities that are emerging. But again, the broad category of connectivity is getting faster. It's getting cheaper. It offers new and greater opportunities to do things. And one of my other GM colleagues once said that driving is becoming a distraction. Well, we have to approach this thing in a very profoundly careful way. There are many things that are possible, and the key question is, well, what should we enable in the vehicle? Because at the end of the day, you're getting in your vehicle to get someplace safely.
How do you decide which direction to go? You know that there are options to the left, options to the right, and forward as well. But who controls that? I mean, how much of that is government controlled? And I'm sure, and this is sort of an aside, but by the same token, you're mandated as to what you can do, and how large is that box?
Well, we are not sure that we understand there's a box right now. We don't want to constrain our thinking, and so we look quite broadly at the possibilities. We have some guiding principles. Number one, has to be safe vehicle operation. Number two, it has to be secure, because now that there's connectivity into the vehicle, you don't want to have anything happen where there's rogue activity. And so we've treated this safety, this secure connection over the last 14 years very, very professionally, and we're going to maintain an ever-increasing focus on that security. Privacy is a big deal. There's a lot of scariness out there and creepiness with some of the things that are possible, and yet as society continues to evolve in their perspectives on what information about themselves they're willing to give up, such as their location, for example. We don't actually track location today. The only time we track location is the only time we know location is when there's an airbag event, or when you actually request, I want to get someplace. Well, we need to know. The GPS then sends that information to us. But a lot of customers think that we're tracking them all the time anyway. Well, that's not true. But as customers become more comfortable with the benefits that accrue as a result of giving away some of their personal information or some of their location information, we're going to be able to evolve in some spaces that in the past, frankly, we've just stayed away from.
And of course, from the privacy, you mentioned the privacy issue, which prompts another question. Any information that you do collect, who owns that information?
Well, the customer owns it. The customer owns it. And so in the aggregate, that information, for example, we have this vehicle diagnostic email today where, nobody asked for this. It was one of those things that was possible. We thought carefully about what is useful here. And several years ago, now your vehicle sends you an email, basically tells you how it's doing. So we've got about 4 million customers today who've opted into this extra service. They have to request it. We let them know about it, and we say, would you like this? No extra cost on this. It's one of the things you get as a customer. And the vehicle tells you, it looks at hundreds of different diagnostic trouble codes in a vehicle. It looks at tire pressure, it looks at engine oil life, it looks at odometer readings, other maintenance schedules, and basically says, hey, things are okay, or you may need to pay attention to something. This particular aggregate, so for any individual person, that's their data, right? They get it, and it's theirs. But in the aggregate, one of the things when a customer signs up for this is they say, hey, GM, you can use this information anonymously in the aggregate to make your vehicles better. And so our engineers are looking at all this information. We're learning a lot from this range of information that our customers let us look at.
We're talking with Nick Pudar, Vice President of Planning and Business Development for the sustaining operation of OnStar. And let's talk about sustaining the operation, which is always important. We have to, as we move forward and as you expand OnStar, and I don't know what the total population now is of the workforce with OnStar or the coverage, but are you in other countries, or are you in China? Will you be in China, which
Actually,
is huge?
Yeah, we are in China now. We launched our services in China this past December. We're growing that business. It's an exciting place to be. The Chinese customers are they're absolutely embracing this capability, and our engagement with those customers, they actually use the service a lot more than they do here. There's also a lot more new drivers in China, and so the whole experience of going out and driving, to know that you're one button press away from somebody who can help in any situation is just an amazing thing there. So we're learning.
Nick, do you think that, for instance, the Chinese or Japanese or any country for that matter, do you think that they're more receptive and more open, and just embrace new technology when compared to American consumers?
Well, it depends on which consumer. If you look in any country, there's a distribution of early adopter groups, and so in the United States, there are rabid geeks, and I'm one of them, who love technology for the sake of technology, and they love to explore what's possible. And in every country we see this. Also in every country we see people who say, I'm in this car, I just want to get there safely, leave me alone, thank you very much. And so when we look at, as a corporation now, when we look at the broad portfolio of consumer needs and desires, and even unknown desires, and then we look at what is the technological solution set, how do we deploy that across our vehicle portfolio, there's some serious business decisions to be made, and we make those decisions very carefully. And we also know that there's value in exploring in that early space. And so one example is, 10 years ago, we actually we read your emails to you, over the air. And it was one of those things where I think we were a little too soon. We were a little too early in that space. But we're always pushing the envelope on these things.
I think there's a difference between being on the cutting edge and the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
I prefer the bleeding edge. If I'm stating myself correctly, I like to go as far out as possible, and that way, even though you get pulled back in, you're exposed, and you expose your associates. Think tank. You sit around and you have a think tank. How many people are involved in that particular?
We've got a small team, about half a dozen folks who are engaged in a lot of aspects of the business. But there's one slice of their work that is to really explore the boundaries and explore the possibilities. And over the years we've seen many ideas, and some of these ideas weren't ready for prime time. Could have been cost issue, could have been the technology wasn't quite robust enough for deployment across the broad population. It could have been it was too encroaching on privacy issues. Another issue could have been misaligned with the overall brand. And so we've looked at these ideas, we've reevaluated them over time, and sometimes things change in the environment, and sometimes change in the cost structure, and then we don't forget the things we've looked at in the past, and we say this one looks like it might be ready, and so let's get a little more aggressive on that. Sometimes you don't want to do this on your own; you partner with other companies, and so we're very aggressive in this exploratory space.
I want to thank you for taking the time today. One last question. A telematics trend, do you see that as a trend in consumers, American, especially with the fact that you've got such safety and you mentioned peace of mind? That's really what OnStar is all about, right?
Yeah, OnStar is all about peace of mind. And, the word telematics was made up many years ago, and a lot of us in this industry have a hard time defining that word. But I like to think of it as a connected vehicle. The vehicle's connected, and what are you going to do with that connectivity? And so one of the interesting, as you talk about trends, one of the interesting directions this is going is the prevalence of smartphones, and a lot more, iPhones and Droids and Blackberries and the like are going to continue to emerge. And, people won't leave home without them. They won't go anywhere without them. My son has a waterproof one. He doesn't go to the shower without it. And so, what can we do to that? And so recently, OnStar GM have announced a broader range of mobile applications that stay connected to your vehicle, because our vehicle is connected on its own. You can do things now. And one example we're going to be introducing this on the Volt as well here when it comes out this fall. And just a simple thing, if the vehicle's not plugged in at night, it should send you a text message. It should be smart enough that it knows your preferences and it should just do that kind of a thing. Or you can monitor and observe your fuel economy, and you can do some things when you're away from the vehicle. Great example is if you happen to be in a place where the weather is on the extremes, such as it is here in Detroit sometimes. I'd love to be able to send a remote start signal to my vehicle, even though it's half a mile away, just so they can warm up in a cold winter or cool down in a very, very hot summer. So there's an interesting array of capabilities that the smartphone connectivity applications are going to let us do, and we're going to play in this space and figure out what's relevant, what sticks, what's meaningful, and build upon that innovation space.
You mentioned that you were a geek. One last question. I do have iPad with me. In fact, it's named Eve, because she has been deemed as my next girlfriend, and Apple and Eve and so I have iPad. Will we see, along with SmartPad applications, will we see perhaps a full screen application for the iPad and for OnStar?
That's absolutely something we're looking at right now, and we're exploring the whole application space. As a matter of fact, we're kind of trying to redefine what does an app mean for people. There's an app for that. That phrase is becoming quite known around there. And, another little example, and this is one that my wife is reminding me that she wants me to have in our next OnStar application. She says when her fuel tank gets to a quarter of a tank, she wants me to get a text message about it. So she wants her car to let me know. We're going to have that app for her.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's straight from the horse's mouth. Nick Pudar, thanks again for joining me, and thanks for the invitation here. OnStar Studios are beautiful, and I appreciate your time. Congratulations. Not only have you created momentum, but the momentum in the education of consumers, because that's where the rubber meets the road. People have to understand it, and the more people understand how to use the equipment that's in their automobiles, specifically the GM cars with OnStar, then the happier they'll be. They can personalize their own vehicles. It's endless. I envy you, and I congratulate you.
Bobby, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. My pleasure being here.
Thanks, Nick.